Hey everyone, Steve Ritter, Phyllis Stokes' son. I'm the and son part of Phyllis Stokes and Son. Um, I wanted to. I do read your comments, and I answer a lot of them, and I actually, as I go through and look, I get a lot of ideas. And one of the questions someone had, they referenced an old video that Mom did from back in 2015. It was called "Retirement and Paying for Children's College." And here's the link right here. Is that the right side? Yeah. so um, and I remember this one, and because it was in 2015. I was actually here at the time in Abu Dhabi, and I remember that watching that video, and a couple of spots going, hey, wait a minute. So someone asked me about that and asked me what I thought about that particular video. So I thought, well, that would be a good video. I'm not going to call it a rebuttal, and I'll tell you why, and as we go along, maybe my thoughts, confirmation, some rebuttal. so, but a lot of what she said was right. But and also what I want to sprinkle in too is again like the last video I did, things that Mom did that taught me a lot, and she did, and how she taught me and how she dealt with me in a lot of those instances. I did take from that, and I did take for that, and Arlene and I have used that with our own children. So she had, and you could hear on the video. And what I would do is kind of reference going through this. I went back, watched, and made a lot of notes, a lot of pages. I'll reference time spots in that video, and things that she said along there, and then I'll have my thoughts on it. But you can hear her rustling pages. She always had her legal pads and stuff. She had her notes, so I have my notes too, and I'm going to go through. But I hope you enjoy. So we'll jump right into it. She talked in the very beginning. She talks about retirement and concerns they had, and with retirement and savings and things. Um, so she talked about the house and selling the house, and that was an ongoing thing. Looking back through a lot of her notes and paperwork and things like that, when I was going through after she passed. Um, that they had been talking about selling that house for years. And I think that she was ready to move on to something else. And I think Bucky liked the idea of that, but I don't know. I just got the impression looking through everything that he liked the town they lived in, St. Matthews. He liked that he knew everybody, that he could go down to the store and he knew this guy, and he knew his story and all that. He liked the fact I looked through one of his address books. He had names. I got a guy for that. He had guys that if he needed anything done, if he needed a tree cut down, he could call whoever, and he had a guy for that. So I think that there probably was a little bit of that, with Bucky not really wanting to move that bad, and I think that was why. But Mom talked about, the plan was, have this big house so the kids can come back and visit and all that. And Arlena and I have learned that too now, that your kids have their own lives. And my oldest, of course, my two oldest boys are in the Navy, and my third son's going on the Coast Guard, and my daughter, she's wants to she's looking at tweaking her major. She wants to go with international relations and looking at NGOs and charities and things like that, working with that, so she could be anywhere in the world. And we've accepted the fact that they're not living around us. We have friends that in some of the places we've lived, that their kids live all around them, and they see their grandkids every day and everything else. And it just when you have kids in the military, that's just the way it is. And I think mom, that was hard for mom, to realize that we were, and I had young kids at the time, and I'm stationed in Oklahoma or in Germany. It's a little tougher to get that moving that big group somewhere, especially with young kids and everything they have going on and all. It makes it tough. But um, we at the 4 minute point, 4:28, she talks about the money supply and what they did for us. And there was a lot of that. That was kind of the theme in there, is what is the right balance of doing for your kids and then looking out for yourself. And I'll kind of give my thoughts there at the end on that. Um, but she's right. We did work about the 5 minute 50 point. She talked about us working, and I did. I had a job. I got my first job in high school in my the end of my junior year in high school. I had a car to get to work, and she's right that we had that. My dad's old work car. He kept it for me and gave it to me. It was a 1981 Horizon, Plymouth Horizon. Had 125,000 miles on it when I got it. So was not sporty at all. And but it was my first car, man. It was awesome. But I used that to get to work. I worked in the summer to save money, and I did that, and then all through the summer. Then my senior year of high school, when school started, I quit because and that was one thing that I've learned. She never pressured us. Oh, you need to hurry up and get out there and work. Um, she got the window open here. I hope that's not too loud. It's a beautiful day here in Abu Dhabi, but she school was important because that really was driving everything. I mean, my $3.35 an hour minimum wage job was not gonna carry me through life. It was my grades in school and that scholarships and going off to college. So that was important. And we never pushed our kids to work either. Um, and the school was the most important thing, that they need to pay attention to that. So mom was the same way. Although she made it clear though that, hey, you're going off to college, you're going to need to save up spending money, which I did. And I got a job toward the end of my senior year in high school, like the last couple of months of school, when it was a foregone conclusion. The grades were all set and all. So I got that, and then I worked all through the summer until I went off to the Citadel. Of course, you couldn't work at the Citadel during the school year. You couldn't have another job, and so it was only in the summers when I could save up the money for spending money. So I uh, and mom was right at the 6 minute and 20 second point. She talked about the cars that they got us. Again, I drove my dad's old car. He passed it down to us, and Renee, the car she had, was from dad as well. And then it was my senior year. Actually, I'd gone off to the Citadel for a school visit, and I came back, and this car was sitting in the driveway. This one that she talked about, it was a 1984 Chevy Cavalier, and real nice car. And I drove that all through college and for about a year after I graduated. And that was a good car. She was right. I mean, it was a good, dependable car. We were starting to have big problems with the other car I had, so they wanted that, and that was important to them. And I see the wisdom in that. But um, at the 7 minute 28 point, no, 7 minute 28 second point, this was the comment I remember making back in 2015 after she first posted. She goes, "Well, look, I'm not going to name names here," and then she subsequently goes on to use my name quite a bit. So, and I was like, hey, I thought you weren't going to use names, but she did. So she starts telling a couple of stories that were all about me and what I went through, and I was listening back through that, and I remember back, and um, I self-reflect enough in life and realize I look back at the mistakes I made, and she was right about that 8 minute 20 second point. She talks about a friend goofing off in the car, and I'd gotten out and was talking to somebody. They were still in the car, and they were sitting there. And they basically put the car in neutral, let it back up a little bit, and then put it back in park, and it jacked the car up. And I came back to the car. I was like, what'd you do? And he goes, well, I didn't do anything. And he lied. He had. And this was a friend of mine. I mean, it's a friend of mine from church too. And we were in the youth group together and all that. And as a good buddy of mine, Well, mom's like, what in the world happened? I was like, well, I don't know. But he didn't do it. And she's like, well, who did? And she goes, well, I don't know, but he did because he said he did. And I was like, well, Stephen, he did. It didn't happen on its own. And I just vehemently defended him. And of course, she talks about, reluctantly paying. Well, she called my friend's dad. And of course, he's like, well, he says he didn't do it. And I believe him. So, well, of course, because he didn't want to pay anything. Yeah, I look back on that now, and that was terrible. I mean, and I learned that um, with our kids too, and we talked about that. It was like, look, family. Arlene and I always were very careful to say, look, we love you guys very much, and we want the best for you. And we're never going to tell you we don't want you to have friends or anything else, but understand that we always have your best interest in heart in the things that we sacrifice and take on ourselves. Your friends may not. And there may come a point when push comes to shove where a friend's going to look out for number one and not necessarily you, which was the case with my friend. And I look back now and I'm like, and you see what the clarity of hindsight gives you that that's true. And so I learned a big lesson there, and I look back now, and Mom was right. And but I did learn the hard way. Um, and then of course the famous at the 8 minute 45 second point, the famous Stephen let his friend borrow a car story. Yeah, that's true. I got nothing to say about that. She was absolutely right, and the way she handled it was right as well. Where I called up and I started giving her some guff back, and well, I'm an adult and all. Well, I remembered that and how I was. And again, with Arlene and I, we were Arlene and I were. I mean, that's one of the secrets of parenting is mom and dad have to be simpatico and on the same page, and and we were, and much to our children's chagrin many times. But we were lockstep, and but that was one of the things we said. Golf cart going by, was that look, while we pay for things, we have a say. And if at any point you want to do things on your own without any of our input or anything else, and no say from us, you take care of it yourself. And that was basically what mom did. She's like, fine, you can let whoever you want buy or drive your car, but you're going to pay the insurance. And I think it was that fact that when I realized how much that would be, and there would be no way I could do the things I was doing in school or whatever, that killed that. So she was right, and I did. She asked the question. She goes, well, I don't know if they learned a lesson or not. At the 12 minute point, she said that I did, very much so, and I did. And um, she talks a lot at the 16 minute and 10 second point around there. She talks a lot about you continue to do for your kids, it doesn't help them. She's right. She's right. I mean, I think for us, you as a parent, your children, you're involved in their lives. You provide input to your children when they're younger, to not get hurt. Like, don't touch the stove, or you're right there watching them. Don't be jumping around the stairs because you might fall down them. Um, Things that keep the kids from don't climb the tree too high. Don't climb out on that real thin branch because you might fall and break your arm. We inject, and as they get older, there's less of that. But when there is an input, it's less about getting hurt and more about being an adult, how to be a successful adult. And with the first kid, as mom clearly said, um, there's a lot more of that because your first kid's hacking through the jungle, and as a parent, you're hacking through the jungle there with them, trying to figure it out. And the kids that follow along, Benjamin always says, Benjamin always said, we're don't think that we're not paying attention, watching all the mistakes that Nathan and Will have made, because I'm gonna be the perfect child, So he pretty much was, and he and Bella, so they paid attention like wise kids do, and learned. Don't do that, and that's probably what my sister stepbrother Ernie did, they were like, "Oh, I ain't doing what Stephen did. You would be wise not to." So, um, and I think that Mom talked about me applying for the scholarships and all of that at the 17-minute point. Um, well, my mom will pay. Yeah, I remember that. She's like, you need to take that out. So, um, and I did put in for a lot of scholarships and all, and mom was real clear all along that her and Bucky were real clear, and my dad that look, we're gonna college is a foregone conclusion. We're gonna make this happen. We're gonna get this through. Um, and I always appreciated it. There was never a doubt in my mind that I was going to go off to college, or that Renee or Ernie were going to go off to college. Um, that they were going to do everything they could to pay for that. And now I think that um, for them back then it was a little bit easier. I mean, the cost of college today is insane for what you get. And I'm a big fan of Mike Rowe, and he talks a lot about that. And there's a debate right now about freeing, student loan debt and all of that. I don't agree with it. I don't agree with it. I mean, somebody needs to, if you're, this is my personal thought, if you're going off to a 4-year college and getting a degree in Eastern European literature or something like that, what are you going to do with that? I guess you could teach Eastern European literature in college or something if you've got a job, but other than that, what are you going to do? And to go to a school that's 40,000 a year, getting a degree in that. I remember we went on a school trip with William. He went to Fordham up in New York, which um, it's pricey, and but with this, what he wanted to study, European Eastern, well, he wanted to study Middle Eastern studies and minor in Arabic. Um, I remember going there on a school trip, and the girl that was kind of walking us around, one of the students, she was I think she was a senior, and I was like, well, what are you studying? And she says, I'm studying fashion design with a minor in Italian. And I said, well, what are you going to do if you don't mind me asking? And she said, I don't know. I don't know. Like, well, your parents can't be feeling too good about that. But anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. But I think that uh, I think the point I was trying to make was you gotta. It was a little bit easier then. College now is incredibly expensive, and you do what you can. And it kind of got to that point with our kids where we're kind of like, okay, look, college is coming up. Here's what we can do, and you have that sit down conversation with your kids, and you go, look, here's what we can do. This is what we can pay for. We'll give you something up to this point, but you got to make this work. And that's really, it's kind of one of their first adult decisions in life, isn't it? And we were kind of that way with our second son, William. So he really wanted to go to Washington, UW, University of Washington up in Seattle. It's where he really wanted to go. We had lived up there and were stationed up there, and he loved it up there. And he got an Air Force scholarship. But the way the scholarship was kind of packaged was he would have to go to a school where we were residents. At the time, we were residents of Texas. Hey, I had to jump back in. The video froze up on me, so I'm back again. So talking about Will, um, and basically to finish that story, he had to make an adult decision. Do I want to go to UW so bad that I would take on student debt? And he decided no. And that was a wise decision, I think. Um, so I mean, so like Mom said in the video. I mean, as a parent, I mean, you got to. Here's what we can do. You have to set boundaries, and like Mom said, I mean, and rightly so, is you've got to look down the road. I'm a big fan of Dave Ramsey. I watch a lot, listen to a lot of his shows and all. But he talks about that a lot. Is like, ultimately, my wife and I'm responsible for her for my whole life, and my responsibility for my kids once they're through with school and off. I mean, I'm not. They're adults now, so I need to take care of me and my wife all the way to death. And I would like to not have my kids have to pay for anything and take care of anything for us. So I need to make sure that I have retirement set aside, and I can do this up to this point until it starts infringing on the retirement. I'm not going to be eating dog food so that you can, you know, do that fifth year at state U for 40,000 a year. Um, it's not going to happen. You're going to have to, you got to get scholarships or whatever to take care of that. So anyway, skipping ahead to the 20-minute point. So she tells a story about my spring break trip. This was my junior year. I had gotten an Air Force scholarship the last 2 years, and she's right. The Air Force paid for books, so they would give me an allotment or an amount of money for books, and she's right. And the I don't. They may have continued paying. They paid some. I don't know if they paid for books specifically or if they just part of the tuition, but it was a by the time my second, she told me that, she said, look, by second semester senior year, the scholarships I had covered everything. So they didn't have to pay anything my second semester senior year. And I think they still paid some tuition, but it was, less than half of what it was they had been paying. But specifically books, I don't remember that. Probably so. Maybe they thought that, but the Air Force, I know, gave me an allotment for a stipend for books. Now the trick was is you could go and pay for the books, and I think maybe what she's thinking of is I would um, buy the books with, and then get, with the stipend money, and then I'd use them through the school year, and then sell them back, and you keep the money, and that may be what she's thinking of. But it was spring break my senior year, and I didn't use her book money to go to Colorado with my friends. Now, what happened was I was in an Arnold Air Society, which is an Air Force organization within ROTC, and I was sent. Basically, we had a trip to a national convention, and the Citadel paid for me and another guy to go out there to this national convention that was in Colorado. And we had a couple extra days that we took because it was over spring break. So we had, the convention, and then there was a couple extra days that, on the front and back end that we went. There were some people we were there with, and that girl from Atlanta that she talks about that I was calling a lot. But we went skiing, and I had a little bit of the money from whatever, selling the books back or whatever, to do that. But it wasn't like I just used the money they paid to pay for the trip. So um, I it's funny because she mentions at the 21 minute and 8 second point about children being smarter than you, and I was laughing about that because um, certainly that's true. I mean, like certainly with like electronics and things like that with my kids. Um, you know, uh, Nathan, come figure this out for me or whatever. Like cell phones now, Bella, how does this work? How do you airdrop something? Whatever. We've had to have them show us and set that up. I think Bella set up our Apple TV at home, and it was like that. I probably could learn, but why? I've got these smart kids who are all tech savvy. I'm gonna just let them do it. But it's one funny story I remember about allowances with Will. We were in Germany at the time, and we were giving them an allowance, just like Mom, talked about. There's some chores you got to do, and we give you allowance for spending. I mean, it wasn't much. It was like $5 a week or something like that at the time. And Will came to us one day and said, "Well, we're in Europe." He goes, "Well, could I get my allowance in euros?" And I'm like, we were sitting there one day, and he asked us that, and I was like, well, like how much? And he said, "Well, €5." And I'm like, well, I said, that's very smart that you figured out the exchange rate that he would be coming out ahead, because €5 was worth like, at the time was worth, you know, $8 or whatever it was. And I'm like, US. And I'm like, but your daddy was born during the day that wasn't yesterday, son. So I do know about that. He's like, ah, thought he had it figured out. Thought he was being pretty slick, but you got to work a little harder than that to pull one over on the old man. um, 22 minutes in, she talks about the phone bill. Um, I do remember that, and I was calling girls, and and it was funny because at the Citadel, at the time in the late '80s, early '90s, more cadets got in trouble for long distance phone call stuff than just about anything else. That the word would get out and spread like wildfire about some number you could dial, and there were a lot of cadets in the early '90s that got in big trouble for because that word got out and people were using it to charge long distance to. There's a convenient mental block where you don't think about somebody's paying for this, kind of like student debt forgiveness, right? So somebody's paying for that. It's not just free money. Somebody's paying for the long distance. So I don't know what I was thinking, honestly, that, hey, I'll just make these calls and charge it to this number. I don't know what I was thinking. So, and then at the 24-minute point, the famous bounce check story. And I feel like I do need to kind of provide a little bit of background for this because it's not quite as bad as she makes it sound. Like I just was, willy nilly, tossing money around or whatever. But this was before the debit card. I didn't have that. All I had was checks, and I had a checkbook, and I would go into the student center, and that's how I got cash. I would write a check for $40 or whatever, and they'd cash it, and then I had spending money for the weekend or whatever. And this was the end of my freshman year. It wasn't January. It was a little bit later than that. It was it was getting to the lean months, as we call them, in April before school ended in May. So I'm getting to the tail end of my money. And I was not, as she did teach me how to balance a checkbook, and I was not very diligent, though, of reconciling the statements and all of that. And I got a little bit behind. And basically, when you get to the tail end of the money, you got to pay a lot closer attention to it and what checks are out and what aren't. And I ended up bouncing a check is what happened. And not only the bounce check, but then there's a canceled check fee and all that. And it was one check, and I do remember making that phone call to mom, and mom did bail me out and talk me through it. And I never had a problem with that again. No, well, not with her. I remember right after Arlene and I got married, I ended up bouncing a check, but that's a different story. But never since then, never since 1993. So it's been a long time since I've ever, it's fishing fun stuff. But and I'm also she talks about this, and this is one thing she said too. That well, Stephen, got a lot of scholarships, so that kind of made up for the mistakes, and that got me thinking about, you know, doing for your kids, and Arlene and I did this with our kids. Is we pushed them to get the scholarships and do that, and of course Nathan went to the Naval Academy, which they pay you to go there, right? So, but then the government owns you, and you're a GI, and uh, and so there was a point where I think there was some discussion, or he didn't use the words exactly, but it was leaning towards, look at all this money that I've saved you by going to the academy. So, and that's where, again, coming back to this is my money as a parent that I am choosing to help with college with. If you get scholarships and things like um, that keep me from having to pay for your college, that's great. Good for you. All right, but it's still my money. I don't owe you that money. Like, well, this is money I would have spent on you, so here you go. That is never on the table. Okay, and now because they worked so hard and they went through that, and he went through this, we my wife and I tend to be a little more giving to them, and appreciate that. And that's something we choose to do. We don't have to do. And we've always been, giving people and all. So, but again, it's that balance between you. Here's your retirement right here, okay. I can bless you all the way up to that point where I got to think about this, and this is what I got to set aside for the retirement. So, um, keeping that in mind. Yeah, and mom's a lot of wisdom there. She had like at the 27-minute 50-second point. I think the gist of what she's getting at is kids got to have skin in the game. People tend to um, care a lot more when they've got an interest in something, some sort of cost, something they put into it. And I remembered a story when Nathan, my oldest, was at the Naval Academy, and he decided he wanted to try out for the pipe band. They have a bagpipes and they do all kinds of stuff, which is pretty cool. Um, Great, because he still loves music. He wanted to try that, so I'm like, oh, we were like, okay, Nathan, sure, great. And he goes, well, I need to buy some bagpipes. I'm like, oh, how much are bagpipes? It was like $1,500. And I'm like, so we were talking about it, and him and Han, and we want Nathan to experience something like try that. So this is Arlene says this was a particularly inspired thought by me. And of course, Nathan over the years now has looked back and said that was the best thing you could have done for me, was said, okay, well, look, we'll do this, we'll buy that, but you're going to pay us back. And because the Navy at the academy, they like I said, they pay them to go there. They get an allowance of money, and it's not much, like $400 a month or whatever it is that they pay them. And out of that, they have to pay other things while they're there, uniform stuff or whatever, and toiletries and all that. Um, but it gets larger the longer they're in the academy. So by his junior year, it was $600 a month or $800 a month, something like that. So that they're getting. And I'm like, okay, well, you can pay us back X amount of money a month until it's paid off, and then they're yours. And but that's the deal. And he's like, oh, great, great. But I wanted that, just. And I also said, I think I even said this. I said, I don't want you paying. If you get this infusion of cash down the road or anything else, I don't want you paying it all in one lump sum, because I want you to feel that sting each month. Each month, I want you to have to pay for those bagpipes. And he did that. Finally paid them off. I think his like first semester senior year or something like that. But he does, to his credit, looks back and sees the wisdom in that and paying for that. But um, I think that there's a lot of wisdom in doing that, and having skin in the game. And that was kind of the gist of everything Mom was saying all along, was everything's about teaching your children to become adults and productive, contributing adults to society, right? And that's everything should teach that. And then one thing, we talk about, I made a lot of mistakes, as you've heard. um, but it's not a reflection on you as a parent if your kid does dumb kid things. And that's the perspective I tried to keep as a father. Is I just, and I learned this a lot as a commander too. The people are going to do people things. They're not robots. They're not flawless, and they're going to do things. And it's your job as a parent to be ready to go, okay, that's not the right way. This is the right way, and to show them that and teach them that and create that kind of family environment that they can learn. And anyway, so this video, this was a long one, less of a rebuttal and more of a confirmation of a lot of what Mom said, with some clarification. It's not well. I was pretty bad about a lot of things, that letting the kid loan the car. Yeah, that was not my fondest moment. But a lot of my thoughts and my wife's thoughts on raising our kids and how we did, and I'm very proud of how they turned out. And they're responsible adults, you know. And I learned a lot from Mom too, and over the years, and I did learn, Mom. So you don't have to wonder. Um, but I hope this was I hope you enjoyed this and this was entertaining, and I hope this, like Mom said in her video, I hope this helps some people if y'all are watching. Maybe it'll give you some insight on some things. So anyway, it's the Colonel signing off, and we'll see y'all later. Take care.